Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, and I've got another very exciting episode for you guys of Collectors of the World. Today is episode 3, and I've got on the original Fuzz. Yes, that is right, guys. Hold your applause. The original Fuzz is finally here to talk about his collection, his channel. We get into a variety of movie topics and conversations. Fuzz has a phenomenal channel, guys. If you haven't subscribed, I've got all those links down below, his Twitter, his YouTube, every link that Fuzz has, I will have down below in the description. He's a great dude. And he talks about a lot of stuff on his channel with a specific focus on the 80s and the 90s and then the early 2000s as well. Like, that's really his sweet spot for movie talk and conversations. But he's also a collector as well that's really gotten back into it hot and heavy over the past 5 years, gotten into the boutique label. So we have a good conversation about that, but just an awesome dude. And I've been following him for a very long time, it feels like. And I was so happy to finally have him on the channel to have a great conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Collectors of the World, episode 3. Let's do it. All right. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Collectors of the World. This is episode 3, and I'm very excited to have the original Fuzz here today to talk to him about his collection and his YouTube channel as well. We'll get into that also because you are a content creator and you're also an incredible collector. I'm seeing behind you right there, you got an awesome physical media collection. So we're going to get into all that stuff. And Fuzz, man, look, I'm just going to start off by saying I'm a big fan. I've been watching your channel for about a year now, and you do some good stuff over there that I'm excited to kind of pick your brain about for sure. So but before we get into it, I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of let everybody know what you're all about over there at the original Fuzz channel. So the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you, Ken. First of all, I really want to say thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I've actually been a big fan of your channel for the last probably about 2 years now. And I only got on YouTube probably a couple years ago. I was kind of a late bloomer to discovering YouTube for entertainment purposes. And you were one of the first channels I discovered, like when I was searching for physical media channels. You were one of you and Films at Home were like the two big ones that came up in search all the time. And yeah, I started watching you. You were one of the first ones I watched. So it's really quite an honor to be here. Thanks so much. As for my channel, it's called The Original Fuzz, at The Original Fuzz, no spaces. It's a physical media discussion channel. Focused primarily on horror, action, and sci-fi films from the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I do a lot of top 10 lists, big fan of list videos and making lists. I've always been a fan of that. And then I also try to help out new collectors, people who are new to collecting, with tips that, they might not be aware of because they're new to collecting or maybe returning to collecting after a long period of time. So I have like a series called Back to Basics that is tailored to new collectors or returning collectors. So those are the things I do on my channel.
Awesome, man. Yeah. I'm a big fan of you and your content, and this is a long time coming. I think we tried to get this going all the way last September or something. I know I had some issues. I think you had some issues, and it took me a while to get back to doing this show, but now we're finally back doing it. So I'm glad I could finally get you on. And yeah, it's funny that you said that you only recently discovered that people were talking about physical media and movies on YouTube, because I remember, I think it was 2015 or 2016 that I discovered that myself. And I mean, YouTube's been around since 2004, 2005. And there's all kinds of people that have been on YouTube since then talking about physical media and movies. And it's like, man, if I just knew that this was going on back then, what could have been, but I just use YouTube for movie trailers and stupid videos and stuff like that, and how-tos and things like that. And I didn't know people were actually having film discussions on YouTube until probably 2016. So
you're going to have to, one quick statement here. You're going to see me wiping off my glasses a lot because when I get nervous, which I am right now, I tend to sweat a lot. And now I'm totally embarrassed by it. So it's with me. I'm sure you guys are all seeing this. This is raw, right?
It's raw. It's unfiltered.
I
mean,
should
yeah, man.
stop sweating once my nerves calm down and I get a little bit more relaxed and get used to our little
Yeah,
conversation here. I
no,
should
no
stop
reason to be
sweating.
nervous at all. I'm nobody special, but I understand. Like, it doesn't matter. Like with me, if I'm going live, like a round table, live stream, something like this, like every single time I get those nerves as well. And you would think by now it would go away, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I've never done
So,
anything like this before. This is
yeah.
all new to me. So
But I get it, man. I'm very introverted as well, and that's one of the reasons I like doing stuff like this, though, because it forces me to kind of come out of my shell a little bit and kind of push forward. But Fuzz, I wanna
exactly.
I wanna take I wanna take it back to the beginning with you because I imagine. Well, first off, let me ask you this. I get in trouble when I don't ask this question. What is your current collection size? Do you have a number? Are you somebody that keeps up with your collection that knows exactly what's in there? Do you have it tracked? What is the number? What is the
I
actual
I
collection
I
size?
do. I have an approximate number. I think I'm probably approaching about 1,200 titles at this point. Somewhere probably between about 1,100 and 1,200. So I consider it a modest size collection, but because there's always
I mean, to
someone
most people, that's
bigger.
probably a massive collection, right? Like the average person on the street, like
Well,
that's a good size
yeah, I
collection.
mean, if you were to talk to me, 4 or 5 years ago, before I got back into collecting, I would have thought that was a huge number. I at the time, I was probably only had like 3 or 400 titles at that time.
Well,
So
even
yeah,
as like a teenager in like my early 20s, like the most I ever had probably at one time was like 600. Like when you factored in like my VHS tapes and DVDs and all that stuff that I was just buying at Walmart. I don't think I ever had
exactly.
any more than like 600 when I finally decided to get rid of all the DVDs because I thought digital was the future, and then I abandoned that shortly after. So,
Right.
if I would have saw my collection now back when I was like 16 or 17, I would have thought I was probably crazy. Uh, but what kind of movies? I know you said you focus in on like the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, I guess you kind of answered most of these questions, but what kind of movies do you really focus and hone in on collecting? Because I know that um, you like to curate your collection very specifically. I've kind of
I
noticed that
do.
just by watching your videos.
Yeah. I consider myself kind of a curator. I mean, I do a lot of blind buying still, but I only buy stuff that I'm really interested in, and there's a lot of stuff out there that I'm not interested in. So I mean, like a lot of stuff. So I
Yeah,
talk about the films that I love the most. The films that I grew up with. I'm in my early 50s. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And those are the films of my childhood and my early adulthood. The 90s, especially, I consider the 90s one of the greatest decades for action films.
yeah,
And then, of course, 80s for horror, 70s and 80s. I love horror from that era. So it's those eras. There's about a 30-year span of time there that is really my jam. Where the films
yeah.
that really resonate with me the most. And I've also been on a bit of a nostalgia kick in the last couple years too. So getting back in touch with those old gems.
Do you feel like the 90s is kind of an underrated decade a little bit? Because I feel like everybody is so passionate about like the 80s and the movies from there. Because I feel like most of the people in the collecting community, like that's their sweet spot. That's when they grew up. Do you feel like people kind of sleep on the 90s just a little bit? Because when I think about it, when I really start to look at those movies, like the 90s is just the best. Like it has so many different types of movies as well that
Sure,
feel
sure.
distinct to that time period, but also like age very well too.
Yeah, I
Not
would
that
agree
movies
with
of the
that.
80s don't age well, but
No, I agree. I think it depends on what types of films you're talking about from the 90s, right? Like I personally am not a big fan of 90s horror. I mean, some of it's okay,
for sure, yeah,
I mean, it just depends on what we're talking about. Scream's okay or whatever, but compared to the 80s and 70s, I didn't like the horror from the 90s as
you're
much.
you're you're absolutely right. There's definitely some good ones in the 90s, but
Sure.
it is few and far between. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of people that would say that horror kind of died in the 90s. Now, I do have a little bit of nostalgia for like the full moon stuff because that's when I was going to the video store and I remember renting like Puppet Master and Demonic Toys and the Subspecies films and stuff like that. So
I
I
haven't
don't
seen a
think that
lot of that. I haven't seen
I
a lot of
don't
the full moon stuff.
I don't think a lot of that stuff is great, but I'm just nostalgic for it.
Sure.
So like I would get it if somebody watched that now and they're like, this stuff sucks.
Sure.
You know?
But to answer your question about being underrated, I do think that the 90s were underrated for action and sci-fi films. I think we got some real bangers out of the 90s. And I
Action
think,
for sure.
take a film like Event Horizon. I love that film. I think it's a
I
great
do
film, but
too.
it wasn't massively popular when it first came out in the 90s,
My dad took me to see that in the theaters and I was like 11 or something. And I don't think he realized what it was because we just watched all the Star Wars movies. And I think he was thinking it was just another like sci-fi fantasy type movie.
That's a pretty
Um,
intense a movie for 11.
yeah, and I know I saw in the theaters and by the release date, I mean, I think it came out like mid 1997 and I would
Something
turn
like
12
that,
that
yeah.
year. So I had to have been 11 when I saw that movie in the theaters. But no, I've always really liked that movie a lot. It's definitely Paul W.S. Anderson's best movie, in my opinion,
I
um,
agree.
for sure. But no, action. Like I know a lot of people when they think of action, they think of like Schwarzenegger and Stallone in the '80s, and that stuff's great too, and Chuck Norris and everybody. But like the '90s really does have some of the best action movies to me, and those are the
A-
movies I grew up on, like Con Air and
Absolutely.
Broken Arrow and Face Off, and just all those movies, and there's so many of them. There's so many of them I'm still discovering, like to this day.
Yeah.
And Cliffhanger and Hard Target with Van Damme, and there's so many great ones. So many great ones.
Yeah, it was a great decade for action movies, and I think I said it before, but yeah, I think it was one of the best decades ever for the action movies. So
Absolutely. And I just I don't feel like we get that kind of stuff today. I don't even feel like we really got a ton of action in the 2000s,
no,
or
I mean we got a few
besides
good
like
ones.
John Wick, because it kind of
Yeah,
just morphed into the superhero, genre a little bit.
yeah, I really like the Beekeeper though. That
I
was
need to
pretty
watch
good.
that. I got that
Uh,
4K and I haven't checked it out yet. I do
yeah,
need
I
to check
checked it
that
out the
out.
other night, and boy, I really liked it. Really good film.
Cool, cool. Well, Fuzz, take me back to when it started with you in collecting. Is this collection of 1,200 movies that you have right now? Is this something that you've curated over a long period of time since like the 2000s, or is this something that's kind of a new development? Did you collect before? Did you have a past life of collecting
I
that
did.
died and then you reborn into this new era? Was it something like that?
Yeah, I did. It really all started back in the 80s for me with music. I started off collecting CDs and, well, cassette tapes and a little bit of vinyl before that. I kind of came in at the tail end of the main run of vinyl. So I had a few vinyl records. The first piece of physical media I ever bought with my own money was a Billy Joel album, Glass Houses, on vinyl. And then when CDs came out in the late 80s, I got into CDs, was collecting a lot of CDs. I'm a big music guy, a musician, songwriter, I've always, and big music enthusiast. And I've always really just loved the music side of things. So for many years, I mainly collected music on CDs. And then when DVDs came out, I really got into it. I was like, oh, cool. They're doing the same thing for movies that they did with music. Now we have movies on
Yeah.
disc. So I got into DVD collecting, and that was really my first serious attempt at it, or semi-serious attempt at collecting movies. And then when Blu-ray came out, I switched over to that, fell in love with Blu-ray right away, and pretty much almost immediately ditched my DVDs because I couldn't handle the lower resolution. Once I was in HD, I was like, okay, no turning back now. And then
Now when that
Go ahead.
happened, did you fully did you get rid of your DVDs or do you still have them?
No, I still have them. I probably have about, I mean, I never had a massive DVD collection. I probably only ever had about maybe 300 or 400 titles. I never
Yeah.
had a huge DVD collection, and most of them I still have. They're in boxes, packed up in storage. I don't even use them at all. It's just pretty much Blu-ray and 4K for me now, with the exception of a handful of like 50 DVDs I've kept for posterity that you can't get in on HD or better.
Yeah.
But then I took a hiatus. I collected Blu-rays for a few years, and then I took like
So were you in
probably
right at the beginning, like 06, 07, 08?
Probably about 08 or 09 is when I started collecting Blu-ray, and I collected for a few years, and then I just kind of stopped. I kind of got tired of movies even altogether. I kind of went down this on-demand streaming rabbit hole with series, and for about something like 8 to 10 years, I think I did nothing but watch a lot of series and stuff, and I just kind of didn't watch movies. I went down the whole
I
streaming rabbit hole.
I get that because I feel like there was a time, and I think it came in like the late 2000s and the early 2010s, where like the TV series were really like just felt like they were getting a lot better, and it
Yeah,
almost
with
felt
like
like they were
Lost.
telling stories better than movies could. Because I remember a period in time when I was like all about TV, and I didn't care anything about the new movies that were coming out. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
well,
was the
these
same
movies
way.
are like, it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, how can you even tell a good story? It's like I saw movies
Yes.
for a little bit as inferior to TV because we were getting stuff like Breaking Bad for me was a big one, and then
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, House of Cards I was really into on Netflix, and there was just a bunch of shows, and my wife and I would always watch them together. Um, so
Yeah, I
yeah, I
went
felt
down
like
that same path. Went
yeah,
down that
I do
same
feel
path.
I feel like a lot of people would maybe relate to that as well because it's just that kind of felt like the golden age of TV. And not that TV's not great now, but I feel like now there's so much of it, like it's so saturated that it's just so hard to keep up with everything. Um,
Exactly.
so you
It's
don't really
kind
have
of
those water cooler shows anymore. Like you got a few, but everybody's just watching different stuff now, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of overload. So
It's
now,
like I go to work and I'm like, "Oh, I was watching this show," and they're like, "Well, I was watching this show," and this other person, "Well, I was watching this show." And it's like nobody's on the same page, like until a massive show comes out, like Fallout or something like that,
right.
or Stranger Things. But that is pretty interesting.
So after that hiatus, I got back into collecting. I got burned out on series, so now I don't have any interest in series at all.
Do
They're
you think that comes with maybe getting older and you got less time, or maybe starting a family, things like that? That's what makes you kind of get out of the series. Because I know now, like I love shorter movies. I
yeah, I
love
do
getting into
too.
getting out with the story and experiencing that, and I do see movies now
Exactly.
as superior to TV shows.
I used
Um,
to be the exact same way. I started out, I loved the shows on the series because you could do a lot more over 10 episodes or, however many hours they devote to telling the story. And they could really had time to really, give us a fully developed story there. But nowadays, I just want to be in and out quick in like 90 minutes. And I want a complete story within a short period of time.
yeah,
I've completely flipped. I used to love really long movies,
yeah.
long, series, the whole thing. And nowadays it's like I'm looking for the shorter movies
Mhm.
and
It
the
sounds like
the
I put more value on the stories that can be told quicker. Like if you can actually tell a story and like make me care and engage in the characters in an hour and a half, I see that almost as more impressive now
Yeah, that takes
than
a
a TV
certain degree
series.
of talent to do that. And I
Yeah.
agree. I think that's even a better thing at this point if we can get
Because
that.
some
So
people will be like, well, that movie needed to be 4 hours, 4.5 hours long, to really get in, engage with the characters. I'm like, that's not all movies need that. Like I've watched tons of movies that are like hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, and I can get the complete story and really like get in with the characters and emotionally invest. And I don't need to watch a movie for 4 hours, to get all that.
exactly. Exactly. So
Like,
So about 4 years ago, I got back into collecting. I was looking at my what was left of my collection. I had probably about that point, I probably had maybe around 300 Blu-rays, maybe. And so all of my titles that I've acquired have been since then, just in the last 3 or 4 years. So I've been pretty busy. I went from, whatever, like 300 titles roughly to almost 1,200 now. So just in a few years. So most of my passion for this stuff, for collecting, has come just in the last few years. And I'm more passionate about this stuff now than I ever was before.
yeah. What do you think drives that passion? I know a part of it is what we'll get into here in a second. It's the fact that you're a content creator now, and you can kind of use it to make content, and that kind of fuels your passion for collecting, while the collecting also fuels your passion for making the content. So I know that's part of it, but what do you think? Is it just the age that we're in right now? Is it all the cool collector's editions that we're getting now? What
That's
makes you
part of it.
more passionate now than you were back then? Do you think?
Well, I think there is given the times we're living in, there is a certain heavy nostalgia component that kind of brought me back in to movies, and wanting to get back in touch with all those old films that I had kind of let go by the wayside for a while, and so there is certainly that. Um, I don't know exactly. It's certainly the limited edition box sets, those kinds of like box sets and
Yeah.
collectible editions and cool packaging. That is something that I've really taken an interest in. But even when I started collecting, that was something I didn't care about. As long as I had the disc in a case and an amaret case, I was fine. I didn't think about slip covers or anything like that. So I'm not exactly sure what it is that has fueled that passion in the last few years, other than maybe a little bit of nostalgia and just getting back in touch with
Well,
movies, because I always I've always loved movies, but I was never as hardcore about them or as into them as I am now. And a lot of
yeah.
that love of movies stems from going to theater with my dad when I was a kid and whatnot. So I really think the nostalgia is really fueling the passion, getting back in touch with that love of movies that I feel like I once had to a certain degree, and then I just took it to a whole new level in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I always had a love for like certain types of movies, like horror films and comedies, but I would never branch out. Like when from age like 12 to probably 25 or 26, it was like I was watching the same kind of movies. I would watch action movies, horror movies, comedies, like that was pretty much it for me. I didn't branch out and watch the dramas, and I mean there's certain ones that I do.
Sure.
I grew up with Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and Forrest Gump and Shawshank. Like I had seen all those types of movies, but like The Godfather, I didn't watch that for the first time until like 5 or 6 years ago. Everybody told me to watch it, and I didn't have any interest. I didn't. Oh, 3 hours long, The Godfather, old movie. I don't care to watch this movie.
That is
Um,
an investment.
but I feel like I'm arriving to these movies now at just the right time because I'm ready for them. And even though, yeah, maybe you can talk crap about my film knowledge because I'm just now watching all these films now. But like, I feel like if I would have watched them 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have appreciated them. And now that I'm watching them with my, older film watching eyes, I feel like I can appreciate these movies now. Um, you know, than when I was a little bit more immature film watcher, I guess.
I can totally relate to that. I've actually had, horror, the horror genre. I was never a big horror fan until just a few years ago. I mean, so I do feel like in the last few years with
And what a
that,
treat that must be to, like, discover all these awesome horror movies from the
totally,
past.
totally, it's been awesome. It's been like drinking through a fire hose, trying to catch up on all the stuff
There's a
I
lot
missed.
because I grew up a horror fan, and it's like, I thought I saw a lot until I got into this community and started seeing all these editions. I'm like, "What is this? What is that?" And it's like, I'm still discovering so many different types of horror films to this day.
Yeah, and me too. Me too. It's so that's been kind of fun. With that increased passion has come an expansion of my interest in certain types of films and certain types of genres that I never really cared about very much before. And horror is chief among them. And now I went from not really being a big horror fan. I mean, I always liked certain titles like Halloween or Dawn of the Dead, but I just didn't, aside from a few exceptions, I didn't really follow the genre that closely. I just wasn't into it. And then like something changed, something clicked a few years ago, and I just suddenly started getting way into horror. And now I consider myself a real big fan of the genre. So it's just funny how that works.
Yeah, and I mean, you must have, if you're saying that you're, what'd you say, you're in your early 50s, like, you must have grew up during the heyday, like, in the 80s. So, were you seeing all these movies coming out in the 80s and you just didn't have any interest when you were a
Yeah,
kid?
I mean, I would watch a few of them, like I saw Halloween 3 and Halloween 1 and 2 and 3 in the 80s. So I watched those at the time. I saw Dawn of the Dead at some point in the 80s. I think I probably saw Day of the Dead too. But aside from that, I mean, there were I think I saw a couple Friday the 13th movies. The first three, I think. But aside from that, it's not something that I didn't really follow
Didn't
horror
appeal
that
to you?
closely. Yeah, it
Yeah,
just didn't really appeal to me that much.
I get it. I get it.
And now I'm like going back and like I feel kind of silly because people who've been following this stuff for all along. I feel silly saying, "Hey, I just saw this film from, whatever, 1983 for the first time, and everybody's going like, dude, we've been watching that for years, and I
Let
I
me
feel
ask you
silly,
this: Do you
such a
ever,
noob.
think to yourself, maybe I shouldn't say I watched this for the first time? Maybe I should just let that be a secret, because that thought has definitely crossed my mind, and I feel like there are people that just don't disclose that type of information. But for me, like, it's like I want people to know that I just watched it for the first time, and it's almost like that's what the channel is about to me. It's like me discovering movies through the lens of physical media, is what I've always said. So I'll always say, like, when I haven't seen the movie, but it's like then I'll look at the comments section, like, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I
How do
know
you have
what
a
you
movie
mean.
channel and you ain't? And it doesn't matter what movie you say you haven't seen. Like, somebody will just think it's the most egregious thing ever that you haven't seen this specific movie from 1957,
Yeah,
or
I've
85
actually,
or whenever it came out.
in fact, on my most recent video on Turbine Media, I got some shit for telling everybody that I haven't seen Barbed Wire before, that I hadn't even heard of Barbed Wire.
Yeah.
I didn't know
It
anything
ha
about that
it
movie.
happens for every movie. Like, there's a massive fan, I feel like, of every single movie, you know?
Yeah,
So you're always gonna get that, but for me, it's just like, I mean, I wanna be honest with you guys. It's like, I thought I was a movie fan. I thought I'd seen a lot of movies until I got on YouTube, and then I started discovering all these different types of films and just diving deeper into this stuff, and everybody's, most people are great about it, to be honest. Like, I always love getting recommendations and people calling out certain movies and saying I need to watch stuff, and most
oh,
people
me
are
too.
awesome.
Yeah.
But you'll always get those few a-holes that just, like, wanna criticize you for not seeing this stuff and basically make you feel like you shouldn't have a channel where you talk about movies because you haven't seen this specific movie or that
Yeah,
specific movie.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, I don't play that game. I
Yeah,
try to be as
it's silly.
transparent with people as possible. If I can be transparent and I don't have anything to hide. I'm all about just being real and giving my real views on stuff.
And that
Uh,
that definitely shines through in your channel for sure. Um, what I also wanted to get into was, we talk about how you weren't as into this stuff as you are now. Do you think part of that has to do? I don't know how engaged you are in, like, social media, but do you see? I don't think you're on Instagram or anything at all.
Not
Um,
Instagram.
you are on X, but do you see people posting stuff and showing off certain collector's editions, and also through YouTube, people unboxing stuff? Do you feel like that makes you more interested and more passionate about this stuff, just seeing other people kind of
Oh,
get it as well?
yeah, absolutely. In fact, I am on social media. I'm not on Instagram, but I am on Facebook because I'm
Okay.
heading into old fart territory here, and apparently Facebook is just for old
I need to
farts
get
now.
on Facebook. Yeah, I haven't,
But
I was on Facebook, like, back in the early 2010s, but I honestly haven't been on it at all.
But there are some 4K discussion groups on Facebook, and I'm a member of a few of them. And so I got a lot of recommendations from people. I learned a lot from people in those groups
Yeah.
when I was first getting back into collecting. Learned a lot more about this stuff than I ever knew before. And in fact, it's part of that knowledge that has contributed to that Back to Basics series that I do on my channel, where I'm trying to kind of pay it forward a little bit, because I feel like I've learned so much from other collectors out there that I just want to try and help out others that are new to collecting and try and pay it forward in any way I can.
Yeah, because that's what drew me in. It's like when I first got on Instagram, and I just got on there, and as I thought I was being original, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do little movie reviews on here of movies I saw in the theaters and whatnot. And I just kept getting deeper and deeper into, like, the movie community. And then I fell into the collector community. I started seeing people showing off all these cool editions. I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like, all this great artwork and stuff of these classic movies I remember renting at the video store when I was a kid, like Silent Night, Deadly Night. And then I saw that edition at Walmart for like $10, and that's kinda how I discovered Scream Factory. Um, and it was just amazing, like, just watching everybody show off all these cool editions, and it just gets very, addicting very fast
Well,
when you start seeing
it's
it.
yeah, it's social media is how I discovered, these collectible editions, the chunky box from Arrow or whatnot.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't know anything about those
because you
kind of
don't find a
editions.
lot of this stuff in regular stores. Like,
Exactly,
Best
exactly.
Buy was
So
starting to kind of show them off, but,
So I
They're not
found
around
social
anymore.
media to be really helpful for learning about things that I would have had no idea about otherwise.
For sure. For sure. So, you collected DVDs, you collected Blu-rays. When did you said you collected Blu-rays in the mid 2000s, right? And then you got back into collecting. Did you get back into collecting like in the past 3 or 4 years? Is that the
Yeah, about
time
four
frame?
years ago. About 4 years ago, I got back
So
into collecting. So
it was at that point, all the boutique labels and everything was hot and heavy. 4K was hot and heavy at that point. Did you jump straight into 4K, or were you a little skeptical of the format at first?
uh, that's actually a great question because I think a lot of people are skeptical of the format at first, and I absolutely was. In fact, I had no intention of upgrading to 4K at all. I was perfectly happy with my Blu-rays, right?
I was
Um,
stubborn on Blu-ray. I didn't want to jump into Blu-ray because I thought my DVDs were fine. You know?
Yeah, that I was definitely into Blu-ray. Like as soon as I discovered it, I was like, yeah, I'm not going back
Yeah.
to standard definition. But with 4K, I was like, Blu-ray looks awesome. I can't imagine it looking that much better. But then I started dabbling in 4K a bit. I picked up my first couple 4K titles, The Natural, the Robert Redford movie, and Terminator 2.
Mm.
My first
You know,
one of
I've
my first
still never
4Ks.
watched that 4K. I've still never personally watched it. I've got like
Well,
3
I
copies in the collection.
I watched it before I even knew anything about the hype, in terms of like there was anything wrong with it. And even watching it the first time, I was like, this doesn't look that great. And I'm like going back and forth between that and Blu-ray and comparing. I was like, geez, my Blu-ray looks better, and
Yeah.
so that kind of soured me a little bit on 4K. When I saw that, I was like, I don't see that much of a difference. I had a few titles, but I just didn't see a huge difference. It
Yeah.
probably took me probably about a year of kind of gradually like dipping my toes in 4K before something finally clicked and I started to realize, you know, how good 4K actually is. But it's not something I immediately took to. It did take me a good year or so. And then once I realized how much cooler the image looked, it was the HDR. I started to notice the over time of watching enough 4K content. I started to notice the image had more depth, more pop to it in general
Yeah.
than the Blu-ray, even if I couldn't quite put my finger on a specific detail or anything.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I didn't really start even noticing that until I started getting the restorations from like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Because at
Yeah.
first my problem was is I was just buying 4Ks of like Marvel movies and Pixar movies, and it's like it's really hard to tell the difference between the Blu-rays and the 4Ks of newer movies, at least to me. Like you can pick it out a little bit, you can notice that HDR, but it's really not that big of a difference when it comes to like clarity and just overall picture quality, in
No,
my
there's
opinion.
not as big of a difference for sure.
So
You
I was
definitely,
like, Blade Runner
yeah.
2049 looks great on 4K, but it also looked pretty damn good on Blu-ray as well. So it was hard for me to like justify it at first, but when I started getting those restorations, that's when I Jaws and Django on 4K from Arrow Video, like that's when I really started to notice
Yeah, I do
that
think the
increased
older
quality.
movies look better on 4K in general. The older films, the catalog films tend to anything shot on film, I think, tends to benefit a lot more from a 4K restoration, or can potentially benefit a lot more from a 4K
Yeah.
treatment.
That's why whenever I'm doing my best of the year lists and stuff like that, people are like, where was John Wick chapter 4? And I'm like, well, first off, I didn't watch it. But second, I probably wouldn't put it in my top 10 anyway, because it's a newer movie that was shot in 4K and digitally, and it probably looks great on Blu-ray and 4K. But so those kind of movies never like pop into my top 10. I think I put Oppenheimer in there, but that was just a really top tier 4K to me. Um,
That's a good one.
yeah, but let's get into your channel, Fuzz. So you started collecting hot and heavy in the early 2020s, around the pandemic time, I'm
Yeah, right
assuming.
about 2020. Yeah,
That's when we all just got dove straight head first into it.
yeah,
We started getting those
yeah.
checks and like, let's start collecting. Um, so when did you decide that you wanted to start a channel? I imagine you were watching movie and physical media YouTube for a little bit before you decided to start
Yeah.
one yourself. But what made you decide to dive in? And when did you
Uh,
dive in? Was it a year or so ago?
a little over a year ago, I started it
Okay.
in March of last year. I started my
And you're
channel.
already at what, 6,000, 7,000 subscribers?
Yeah, yeah, about 6,400. So
I
right
mean, that's
now,
great, man. That's awesome. It took me
yeah.
over a year to hit 1,000.
Oh, it surprised the hell out of me. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that at all. I went into the channel hoping to get 1,000 subs in my first year. That was my goal. Let's see if I can get monetized in that first year. And I did that in like 3 months, and I was like, whoa. So I'm really surprised by the growth on the channel. Yeah, I did not
And I
expect
was
it to do as
looking,
well as it did.
you got a video on your channel that has like 160,000 views or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's
So
part of that video is part of I think, that caught a
I
lot
got
of
nothing
people's
nowhere near
attention.
that.
Yeah, it's like that's the only
That's
video on my
crazy.
channel that has that many views. I think it's up to like
Yeah.
185,000 or something now, but yeah, it's crazy. That one, and it
But you
keeps on
deserve it though.
giving.
That was a great video, and all your videos, you just portray this like confidence, like you know what you're talking about, and you just, I don't know, you're not wiping your face. You don't have sweat all over you when you're in those videos, Fuzz. Like you're just like confident there, and it's like you engage with your viewers as well, which I appreciate. And your content's very long form as well. But it's not boring. Like whenever I turn on a Fuzz video for like 30, 40 minutes, I never turn it off. I get all the way through it. I remember you did a video on packaging for like an hour where you broke down all the different types of
Yeah,
packaging. And I was like, damn, I thought my videos were long.
yeah, I went a
But
little
I
nuts with
watched
that
the
one.
entire thing and I enjoyed it. And then I think I did a video kind of reacting to it as well
You did,
with
you
my
did. I
own
remember that.
packaging. So you do some great stuff, man, and you have a confidence to you when you're talking and you're speaking, and you definitely deserve the success that you've had over the past year for sure.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I certainly don't feel confident when I'm making my videos.
I don't either.
I piece those things together. I shoot
Well,
the video in all these different little sections. I shoot multiple takes of what I'm saying and
I don't
whatever, and
even
just
notice
piece it
that. Like
together.
when I'm watching your videos, I'm like, does this guy just sit down and he just talks in the camera for like an hour and he just doesn't mess up? Like that's incredible. It doesn't even feel like it's pieced together. Like it feels like
Yeah,
it's just completely
there's a
natural and it
lot of
flows the entire
editing.
time.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
hear
I'll
you.
sit there and memorize just a few lines at a time and just record them, and then then record
It's
the next few
crazy.
lines, and then kind of piece it all together. It's actually Um, it may not appear that way, but it's actually one of the most nerve-wracking parts of the whole YouTube channel is recording videos. That I find that to be a little bit stressful.
I hear you, man.
I'm
I
getting
feel the
used to
same
it,
way.
but it's stressful for me, and I always feel like
It's weird, and
it is.
you never lose that. I'm sure there's some people that do lose that, but it's like you're looking up at a camera. And I've just got my phone here, and it's like I see myself and I'm talking to myself basically, and then sometimes I just get lost in my own thoughts. And I'm like, what was I talking about again? That's when I have to stop. Um,
Yeah, I do that a lot.
Yeah, I guess I should I haven't told everybody to subscribe to your channel, but everybody, if you haven't subscribed to the original Fuzz, I will have all of his links down below in the description. I'll put your Twitter down there, your Facebook store, whatever you got, YouTube, all the stuff, all the Fuzz links I'll have down below in the description. So, so you started about a year ago. And what did you say? Did you say what made you want to get into it? I'm sorry, I'm all over the place.
No, it's actually it's watching guys like you. Actually, is
Okay.
I was kind of inspired watching you and other blue tubers out there. Garrett at Born to Be Rad.
Born to
There's
be
a lot of
rad,
people out
the
there.
rad one.
Yeah, he's great. There's a lot of people out there I've kind of watched. Of course, Films at Home. For a time, I was watching a lot of his stuff, and I mean, there's a ton. I'm drawing a blank on everybody now, but I got inspired. I really wanted to uh, add my voice to the conversation, I guess, and that's what, the whole watching you guys do your thing. I was like, well, I wouldn't mind giving my opinion on this stuff. I wouldn't mind showing off my releases, and so I decided to take the plunge and just go for it. And here I am.
I'm glad you did, sir, because you definitely contribute and you have a lot to offer to the space for sure. What is your, so after doing YouTube for a year, what is your current mindset on YouTube? Are you still pretty happy with it, satisfied with it, still engaged in it? Are there times when you're like, I just don't feel like doing this anymore. Do you ever think that to yourself, or are you happy with how
Not yet.
everything's going?
Not yet.
Okay.
I mean, I do get, like I said, I get a little stressed trying to make the videos sometimes, and sometimes I wish I could be a little bit better about my consistency, getting more content out more frequently. So that's like my only thing that I'm trying to work on improving a little bit, trying to
Yeah.
amp up my output a little bit. But no, I'm really digging it. Outside of that, I'm really digging it. I'm very curious to see where this channel goes and you know, where it's headed, because I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. You know, I'm just kind of winging it.
I
You
hear
know,
you.
I don't plan out like multiple videos. I mean, I plan things out, but I don't like usually record multiple videos and then just have them in the pipeline all scheduled and whatnot. Like, I'm pretty much doing it one video at a time. I write my scripts out and my notes and everything well out. You know, I plan videos ahead of time from that perspective. But in terms of like actually recording the videos, it's just one at a time, edit it and get it out. So,
That's crazy to me. Do you write it like a script? Is everything that you say in your video scripted, or is some of the stuff off the cuff?
a lot of it's off the cuff, but a lot of
Okay.
stuff is also
I was
scripted.
like, it
I mean,
sounds so natural. Like no part of it sounds scripted at all. So,
well, when I
like some
script
people
things
you can
out,
tell like when it's scripted, but it's like with you,
yeah.
like if you told me you scripted, like that would be a shock to me because everything sounds very natural and off the cuff.
Well, I just try to, like, when I'm writing a script out, I don't even, I mean, I call it a script. I guess that's what it is. It's more notes, but I kind of write the kind of key points that I want to make sure I say. And then some things
Yeah,
I will actually
I do
script
that
out if I want to.
sometimes as well.
Yeah, if I want to say something a specific way, I'll actually write it down so I can make sure I say it, you know, the way I want to. But
It's always a good idea to do it that way. And plus you less risk of forgetting something like super important that you need to talk about. Because if you
right,
don't, you'll get 55 comments telling you that you didn't talk about this thing that you should have.
right. Oh, you forgot to mention this. Oh, yeah, I did.
Because I
So
do it a lot. A lot of my videos, guys, man, I just sit down and I just turn it on and I start talking. And that's when I make a lot of mistakes. And then a lot
me
of
too.
people start
Yeah,
commenting. I'm like, maybe I should have scripted this out. But I'm like, you know what? It's just what the channel is. You know,
right.
it's what I got time for. Um,
But not everything is scripted out. Like when I'm doing my list videos, my top 10 list, I might write a brief little script or notes for like the intro of the video. But then once I actually get into like showing off my titles and talking about the list, usually I kind of just wing that and just talk off the cuff. And sometimes it shows, sometimes, you know,
yeah.
because I repeat myself a lot when I do that. But so it's kind of a combination of off the cuff a little bit and then some scripting.
Yeah, you do a lot of rankings and top tens and stuff. And I was telling Daniel Cobweb's channel because he does a lot of those as well, and I like those. Those are like some of my favorite videos. I don't do a lot of them
Mine too.
myself, but I would like to maybe try to get into doing more of that type of stuff because I love ranking stuff. I used to really love ranking things like coming up with my top 10 for the year and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, and you know just always keeping track of like what's my Quentin Tarantino movies ranked and stuff like that, and always adjusting things as I go and as I watch more from more filmmakers trying to rank those as well.
Yeah,
I
I've
used to be
always been a big
super into
fan of
that stuff.
lists. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan of lists and making lists my whole life, really. It's just, it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we try to do a little bit of that on my wife and I's channel, Married with Media. But she hates ranking things. She absolutely hates
really?
it. She hates having to figure out like what she's gonna put in like 2 and 1. So we don't do it as much over there. But let's get into what type of collector you are here real quick, if you don't mind. I've got a
Sure.
few questions to get into. I think we talked about this a little bit, but do you buy stuff day one, or do you mostly wait for the sale? What percentage is it for you?
It depends on the title. I will buy things on day one if I want it and I want to make sure I get a slipcover or whatever limited edition packaging
Yeah,
the item has. But I also prioritize too. You know, I'm also like, it depends. I have to budget and prioritize just like anybody else, So, there are certain titles I may want to get on day one, but I might go, oh, that one's not as critical. If
It's
I
not
wait a month or
necessary.
two on that, then I'll probably still get a slip. Or if I can wait 2-3 months, I'll probably still get a slip. And if I don't get a slip, no big deal. But so it just depends on what it is. But if it's something I really want, like, The Abyss or Aliens or something on 4K, then that was, of course, a day one for me.
Do you ever look at it, because you do have a channel? Do you ever look at it from like a content perspective? Is it like, oh, this is going to be a big title and I'll be able to do something with this for the channel? Do you ever think of it like that?
Sometimes, but not usually that often. I mean, I
Not
thought
usually.
that with the James Cameron movies, but
Yeah, but they were also
but
ones you probably really wanted because everybody
but
really wanted them.
yeah, I had been planning on doing that video for like 6 months. So
Yeah,
uh, that James Cameron 4K takeaways video. Uh, so yeah, that was always going to happen regardless. Um, I
yeah.
just
I
lost
try
my
not
train
to
of thought
fall.
there.
I try not to fall into that trap, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't from time to time. And I'd be like, oh, that unboxing video will probably do really well if
Yeah.
I just go ahead and get this release.
Usually I just talk about the titles I'm feeling at that time, whatever I'm in
Yeah,
the mood for that time or whatever list idea I've got. I just talk about the stuff I like. And, if there happens to be a title, coming out or that I happen to watch that might be of interest to a larger group of people, then, great, I'll
yeah,
cover it. But I don't necessarily tailor my content towards uh, really popular stuff, just for that purpose, if that makes sense. I just kind of
yeah.
go with whatever I'm interested in, and if it happens to be
And
a really popular title, great.
yeah, yeah, that's the way you should do it. And I feel like your channel, just the niche that you're in with 70s, 80s, 90s, that's kind of the sweet spot for most physical media collectors anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do you buy you say that you focus mostly on 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Do you buy any like new stuff? Do you buy any new movies ever? Are there any new movies that catch your attention?
Yeah, I do.
2020s?
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy as many, but there are movies that come out that I like. I mentioned The Beekeeper. I just picked that one up not too long ago, or just last week actually. And The Equalizer 3, when that came out, I was a fan of that. The John Wick 4, I love the John Wick movies. So there are new movies that I like. Dune 2, I actually saw that one in the theater and
Nice.
pre-ordered that as well. So there are newer movies. It's just there aren't as many newer movies that I'm into as older stuff. I feel like we've kind of lost something in movie making now in the
Yeah.
modern era. It's
Yeah.
not the way it used to be. It doesn't seem like people have the same investment or value in movies that they once did, at least 20, 30
Yeah,
years
it's
ago.
weird. It's like it's something that I can't like quite put my finger. It's not that they're not making good movies. Like there's still a ton of like very unique and original films. Most of them are on an indie level.
Sure.
Um, but it's like even those, it's like just something. There's some magic that's just not there. I've said this
Exactly.
before. I feel like movies focus too much now on like being super realistic and just so much like your own life. Like they really like to tap into how you're feeling in life at this particular time in history. Um, and I get it; it's a commentary, that's a reflection on the era that we're in right now. But I like to escape sometimes when I watch movies, and I don't feel like movies focus on that as much anymore.
Absolutely. That's one of the main things I'm into with this whole nostalgia kick I've been on over the last few years is to escape the
Yeah,
modern era
the
and
movies
and go
back then were just
back.
so much more imaginative, and it's like they did cool shit that they just don't do now.
Yeah. I
Um,
miss the practical effects, that
yeah,
I've kind of started to sour on CGI a bit over the last few years,
and that's
unless
why
it's
like
done really well.
you may laugh when I say it, but that's why I appreciated a movie like Barbie, okay? Because they did all the sets practically, and it's like
Oh, cool.
they didn't do a ton of CGI in that movie, and a lot of people kind of crapped on that movie. And I know it's not popular to say, "Oh, I like Barbie," um, but I appreciated that the fact that Greta Gerwig actually built the sets and built the dream house and built the world and she didn't
That's really
rely on a
cool.
bunch of CGI.
I haven't seen Barbie, so I didn't know that, but that's cool.
It's not a great movie, but I appreciate those aspects of that she cared enough about the filmmaking process to do something like that. And I'm not saying it was all practical. I'm sure there was some CGI in there.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan's like that too. You know,
Christopher Nolan. So like both of those movies coming out at the same time, making the money that they did, I think was super cool because they were both very well made movies, kind of going back to that old school era of filmmaking.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, that's how
I
I
think
felt with
people are starved
Oppenheimer.
for that now. I really do.
I absolutely agree. I think people are craving it in a big way. You know, I think
Mhm.
they miss the way we used to do things, or at least a certain segment of the population does. You know, there was a certain magic that the movies had back in the day, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s a bit. There was a certain magic that I feel like we've lost it a little bit.
I agree. I think that the genre that does it the best, that can allow you to escape the best, is still the horror genre. Um,
Oh yeah,
I still think they're doing a lot of really creative things in the horror genre, mostly at the indie level. But I don't know if you saw Late Night with the Devil, but that was a really,
not yet.
really
I
good
haven't seen it
movie.
yet.
I enjoyed that one a lot.
I will have to
Um,
check it out.
I would definitely recommend it. Not that you don't have to get that $90 Umbrella edition. I'm sure it's going to be released in the States, but it's a good movie. It's definitely a good
Cool,
movie.
cool.
So do you buy a lot of mainstream releases, like catalog titles, or not catalog, but like, studio titles, or do you buy mostly boutique at this point?
At this point, it's more boutique than major studio, but that's because I pretty much bought most of the major studio stuff that I wanted. You know, over
Yeah.
the last few years, when I first got back into collecting, I was picking up a lot of major studio stuff. Wherever I could find deals on the titles that I had to catch up basically, and all the stuff that had been released that I hadn't picked up yet, hadn't seen yet on 4K. So I added all that, but now, or added all the major label stuff to my collection. But now there aren't very many major label titles that I don't have that I actually want. So most of what I really want comes from the boutiques these days. You know, they're the ones releasing the stuff I'm into the most. Now, if a major studio puts out, a new catalog, a new release of an older catalog movie, a new 4K one, then I'll buy that, of course.
Yeah.
But it does seem like we're getting a lot more catalog movies from the boutiques than we do the major labels these days.
Do you ever wish the studios would just give it up and just give all their stuff to the boutique labels? Because I do.
I definitely wish that with Disney.
For sure. Not just give it to Sony, because Sony's just going to lock everything in a box set.
They might.
Steelbook only release. But I sometimes just I'm like, just hang it up, guys. Just license all your stuff out. It's the best of both worlds. You don't have to do the work, and you still get paid for it.
Exactly. Get your cut from the sales, and yeah, I mean I'd love to see them do more licensing. So.
Do you think the boutique labels could handle that though? Just all those titles, like we would start seeing like 10 announcements from Arrow Video a month, or Scream Factory. Kino Lorber would probably put out like 85 titles a month.
I think Kino could probably handle it, and
They
maybe
seem like they could.
Shout Studios, maybe, but
Kino's output is insane.
I
even
know
right now,
they are
absolutely
amazing.
insane.
They just like keep going and going. I can't believe how much stuff they are constantly putting out. Very consistent,
Yeah.
And they put out a lot of really good titles too.
It's quality. Like, it's always. I've never had a Kino that wasn't pretty high quality.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really happy with all of my
A lot of
Kino
people
titles.
give them crap about their generic disc art and their packaging, but it's like, if as long as I expect it from the label, like, and it's fine and it's reflected in the price as well, then I think it's fine. Not every single label has to have $50 or $60 box sets. But
I
what
agree.
now that we're on the boutique labels, what boutique label is your personal favorite? What'd you say?
It's probably Arrow Video at this point, although Vinegar Syndrome's very close. That's tough because it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about packaging versus like the number of titles that a label has that I'm interested in, because like Scream Factory and Shout Factory, they put out a ton of titles that I'm interested in, you know, stuff that I really want.
Yeah.
Vinegar Syndrome doesn't put out as much stuff that I'm actually interested in. I mean, they do put stuff out, but there's not nearly as much as with, you know, Kino or Scream Factory or whatnot. So it depends on whether we're talking about the packaging versus the catalog of titles, the selection, you know. So I'd say Arrow and Vinegar Syndrome are probably my favorites. Arrow above all. I mean, their restorations are awesome. Their packaging's awesome. Just everything's great about them. And Vinegar Syndrome too. So they're like my top two. But then after that, it's probably, you know, Shout Studios, Scream Factory, and Kino are my other favorites, just because of their selection of films is so vast.
Yeah, and you just feel like when you order from Arrow and Vinegar that you're just in good hands. You know,
You
you
do.
feel like you're going to get a quality product, and you feel like it's going to be a really good restoration. And there's almost like no question. You know, it's like I knew that Southern Comfort was going to look great on 4K.
Oh, that was a great release.
I knew the packaging was going to be incredible. I knew they were going to take care of me on special features. It's like you just expect these kind of things out of Arrow and Vinegar Syndrome, which is why, like, at times, if they ever let you down, you may be a lot more disappointed in them than you would be other labels. But it's very rare. It's very rare for me, at least.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've been very happy with what they put out. So
yeah, I agree with you. Do you ever order anything from second sites? Have you gotten into them yet?
I have a little bit. I mean, I've got a couple titles. I've got the Dawn of the Dead. Hang on a sec here.
Of course, that's a staple.
Where is that? Oh, there it is. So I've got like the streamlined version of Dawn of the Dead, you know, which
Still
I didn't
all
get
the same
big
stuff in
box.
that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's got all the cuts of the film, and you still have the bonus like documentary and stuff.
Is that thing still available?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that one still available? That's cool.
Yeah, you can get it from, if you're, you know, for those in the US, you can get it from Amazon US, and it ships like through Amazon Global, but you can actually buy it on the Amazon US website. So that's where I bought this. So, yeah, that's I lost my train of thought there with where we were going.
I was very lucky that I was able to acquire that damaged for a discount price, but it was very slightly damaged, like in the corner.
And then from Second Sight, I also got The Guest. That was really cool.
Phenomenal.
It's back there, but yeah, that was something.
Movie.
Such a great movie. I'd never seen it. That was like one of those weird ones where it was a blind buy. I mean, I got it as a gift, but I had never seen it when I got it, but I wanted it. I'd heard great things about it. It looked like the kind of movie I dig. And boy,
that's a throwback right there. That's a throwback to like an 80s, 90s action thriller.
It totally is. I loved it. Such a great film.
Awesome.
But aside from that, I don't order from Second Sight very often. If they have something that I really, really want, like when The Hitcher comes out, I'll be all over that. But I didn't like pick up It Follows or you know, it depends on the release. It has to be something I really want for me to order it from them. You know, and
I'm really
on Blu-ray, so I was like, I don't think I need it on 4K. So
it's really going to be hard for me with The Hitcher because, like, I love ordering the cool Second Sight releases. And I know they're going to do an incredible box set with that when it finally gets announced. But I did get the Umbrella version, and it's just a Blu-ray, and I'm sure it's going to look better on 4K. But it's like, do I need the 4K of this? Because I already got a really nice box set from Umbrella. So that one's going to be tough when that finally gets announced. Me deciding whether or not I'm going to get it or not.
I'm definitely getting it. That's the one release from Second Sight that I've been very anxious to.
They've been keeping us on the hook with that thing for like 2.5 years now. Like,
yeah,
at least
been a while.
At least. Are you a big Steelbook collector? Do you like Steelbooks or do you like slipcovers? Or I don't even want to say this because I feel like this one's the easy answer. I was going to say like limited premium editions box sets,
chunky boxes or rigid, hard chunky boxes. Yeah, like the Dawn of the Dead. I love the chunky boxes the most. That's what I tend to call them. I've always thought of them that way.
Let's reduce it to Steelbooks or slips. Like if we're talking about a studio release, are you more likely to get the Steelbook or are you most likely to get the slipcover?
I tend to prefer slipcovers over Steelbooks. I do have some Steelbooks. If I really like the art on a Steelbook, I'll get it, but I probably have maybe less than 30 or 40 Steelbooks in my collection.
Okay.
I don't have that
I was
many.
gonna say,
It's
because I
mostly
don't usually see you
slipcovers.
show off too many Steelbooks.
Yeah, I have a few,
So
but
I was assuming you probably weren't a huge Steelbook collector.
yeah, I'm more of a slipcover person. I do like the slips, and I've become kind of fond of those, and do prefer to get slipcovers wherever possible.
Yeah, I've been thinking recently about. I do like some of my Steelbooks, but like reducing my Steelbook collection just a little bit because I don't love them like I used to. I don't know. The allure of them just kind of waned a little bit.
I just worry like the spine's going to break on them or something, and they'll fall apart. Like I don't know, 10
Yeah, you
years
get
down the
that
road or
sometimes.
something.
I
The
like the
Steelbooks are
Lionsgate
so
ones because
delicate.
they're beautiful, but besides that, it's like I don't know. It's like you pull them off the shelf and you're always worried, like, did I scratch it when I pulled it off the shelf and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I do like the Steelbooks that come with slip covers, like those Lionsgate ones. Those are cool. Those I
Top
actually really
tier.
like because you've got a slip cover to, protect the Steelbook a little bit. So I don't
Yeah.
mind those as much.
Top tier for sure. We touched on this a little bit, but do you do a lot of blind buying, or do you mostly collect for stuff that you know that you like already?
Well, I do a lot of blind buying because I'm constantly discovering new films that I'm into, and I love discovering new films that I'd never seen before that end up being, real gems or whatever. Um, I think most of the stuff that I really wanted, I pretty much have most of the key titles in my collection that were most important to me. So at this point, it's about discovering uh, other films that I'd never seen before, or films that I saw before, but it's been many years, like revisiting a lot of films. But there are a lot of titles that come out that, yeah, I do blind buy, but I don't buy just anything. Like I will actually research
Has to
it.
be
I will.
something that you feel like is going to be in line with your taste.
Yeah, I have to have a pretty strong indication that I'm going to like the title to buy it. I won't buy films that I don't like or don't have a whole lot of interest in. And
Well, I know you're big on like honing in on filmographies and stuff. Do you try to, if there's a director you really like, do you try to complete his filmography in your collection if you can?
I, I don't necessarily try to complete the filmography unless every title is one that I want, but I'll just get the
Yeah.
titles that I want. But with John Carpenter, I think I
What
pretty much
if he
have
just has
all of his
one that
stuff.
you have no interest in? If it's just one, and you're like, I got to get. Does it make you want to get that just to complete it?
It kind of depends. I mean, no, for the most part, if there's that one that I think is a real turkey that I really don't like, I just won't buy it.
That kind of gets into like, I imagine that you're not like this, but the people that want to collect all the spine numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Maybe 90% of them you want, but then there's the 10% that you just have no interest in, but you feel like you need to get them because they're a part of the collection. So you don't have that
Right.
going on at all.
Not too much. I mean, there are a few things where that's happened there where I said, well, I'll go ahead and get it, but well, okay, only if it comes like in a box set, like the Halloween what was it? Halloween 6, 7, and 8. Was that what it was? The
Yeah,
Scream Factory.
they called it the 1995 through 2002 collection or
Yeah.
something. Along with
Yeah, I didn't really
where
have any
you
interest
got
in Resurrection.
Resurrection on 4K.
Yeah, I do. I have it. I didn't really care about it, but I don't really like Resurrection, but that's
Yeah,
an example of one where I was like, all right, I'm going all in on the Halloween movie, so I may as well just grab it.
yeah,
But at the
that
time, we couldn't just buy H2O, like as a
yeah.
standalone steelbook
How
like
do you feel
what
about
Paramount put
Curse?
out. About what?
About Curse of Michael Myers?
I thought it was pretty decent. I only saw
I
it
like that it
for.
had both cuts because that's one movie where both cuts really feel like unique, like and different. I don't know. They do a lot
I
of stuff
don't
with the
know if I've
story.
seen the theatrical cut of that. When I watched my copy, I just watched the producer cut. So
Producer's cut's wild, but the
it is.
theatrical cut's wild too. Like they both go in like different directions when you get to the third act. It's kind of cool to watch, really.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and watch the theatrical cut next time because I don't know if I've ever seen it before.
Now, neither
But
one of them are great Halloween films, but it's still cool to watch the differences. I used to love Curse though when I was a kid. I thought
I
that
like it.
Michael was the scariest in that one.
I like it more than Halloween 5. So
Yeah, yeah.
That
Which
that
I
one's
like
not.
Halloween 5. I like them all, honestly, except for Rob Zombie's. Well, no, I can't say that now because of the new trilogy. I like them all except for Rob Zombie's first film and Halloween Kills.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the zombie films, but I do like. I did like the new trilogy. I didn't. I was one of those apparently few people who didn't have a problem with David Gordon Green's approach.
Yeah, I thought Ends was okay. It was interesting. My problem was they just didn't go all the way. Like they set some things up and they just kind of felt like they backtracked by the time we got to the end. But Kills, I just couldn't stand. I couldn't stand. But maybe I'll like it eventually when I, rewatch
I
it.
feel like people may kind of reassess those, 10
You
years,
always
15 years
do.
down the line. So
I've even reassessed my thoughts on Rob Zombie's first Halloween, which is a movie I hated for the longest time because as much as I hate the first 45 minutes, I actually think the last part is decent. And I like his second one. I actually like the second one.
I
Because
never
it's
saw the
something
second one. I've heard it's a wild ride, though.
I hated it when it first came out, absolutely hated it. But I actually appreciate it because it's different. It's not just him doing the original story again. It's like something more unique and different. So, but anyway, let's. Do you shop? Do you do any thrifting? Do you shop in any thrift stores? You have any of that going on around where you're at
No, not too much. I pretty much order everything online.
online? Do
I
you ever get
mean,
anything that's used or try to hunt some deals and things like
yeah,
that?
occasionally on eBay I will if I'm looking for a title that's either out of print or kind of hard to find. I might do a little comparison shopping and see if I can find like new, gently used copy of something on eBay or whatnot. But so yeah, I do buy some used stuff occasionally, but for the most part, it's pretty much like ordering on Amazon and from the boutiques and whatnot. So I don't buy a whole lot of used stuff unless it's a rare item that that want in my collection that's out of print or close to out of print or something.
Yeah. So getting into this other topic, what are some movies? I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit. What are some movies that you really want to see either come to Blu-ray for the first time or come to 4K for the first time? Do you have a wish list that you can think of any specific titles off the top of your head?
Yeah, I do. The thing about that question is that I feel like a lot of my movies that I really wanted came out.
They came out.
I, you know,
You're lucky
prior.
then.
Yeah, I mean, The Abyss was a really huge one for me.
Yeah.
That one, but I'd like to see Outland on 4K. I'm hoping Warner Brothers maybe
Sean
puts that
Connery.
out. The old Sean Connery, Peter
I feel like
Hyams
that's
film.
one I don't know if Warner Bros. Would put that out themselves, but I feel like that's one they could license,
That
maybe
would
to
actually make
Arrow
for a
or
good, yeah,
Vinegar Syndrome. That would be a good
that'd
VSU.
be an
If they could,
awesome PSU or boutique
yeah,
release of some kind. Yeah, Vinegar Syndrome I could see them doing a great job with that one.
yeah,
But I'm trying to think of what else. The movie Contact, I'd like to see that come out on 4K. The Fincher films, Fight Club,
yeah,
that's a big one. But most of the stuff I want to see is like the stuff under the Disney umbrella that we've been waiting for, like Gone in 60 Seconds, or what else am I thinking? I'm drawing a blank, but
Armageddon,
Armageddon,
Con
yeah,
Air,
Con Air, yes,
all those damn action
all of
movies we
that
were talking
stuff
about
we need.
earlier.
Yeah,
We
we
finally got
absolutely
Face
need that.
Off, but
And that's a great 4K. I thought that they did a
it
great
is.
job. It looked
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't feel like a lot of people really talked about that, but that was it kind of came and went because it came out around December and Christmas time. But I was like, that was really good 4K.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Um,
I was really impressed with it.
yeah, for sure. I want to get into a few movie questions. If you had to pin it down, what's your favorite genre of film?
Well, that's so tough. Uh,
The
Probably
one that brings
action,
you them. Okay.
action, or it's a cross between sci-fi and action. Uh,
Yeah.
when you can mix sci-fi and action together, that's the best for me. So
Do you feel as satisfied as a physical media collector with what we get as far as sci-fi films and action films on physical media? Do you feel like we get enough cool releases of those types of
I,
movies?
I do think we get quite a few, but like the titles we just mentioned, I'd love to see those. I think we could get a lot more. But yeah, I think we've gotten some really good stuff in recent years, and it's funny how this works because over the last few years, I mean, 3 years ago there were a bunch of titles on my wish list, and in that 3 years time, many of them have actually come out on 4K.
That's really
So
cool.
I love that, So now
Yeah.
it's a little harder for me to talk about in that regard, because I feel like I've gotten a lot of my dream titles, that things that I had wanted, things that I thought were essential to 4K. Point Break, that's another one. That was one we
Oh, that was a
definitely
really good
needed.
one too.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What is who's your favorite actor of all
Denzel
time?
Washington.
That's
Denzel
a good
Washington.
one.
Yeah,
That's a good one. Top tier.
I mean, I've got a lot of favorites. I like Gene Hackman a lot too.
I need to watch more of his movies. He's kind of a blind spot. He was in so much too,
yeah, he's
but it's
got a
like I
lot of
really only
credits.
know him from like Enemy of the State and uh was that the Royal Tenenbaums? He was in
Yeah,
a couple
yeah.
other movies. I
I
feel like in the
think Royal
90s and
Tenenbaums
2000s.
I think Royal Tenenbaums was his last film before he retired, if I'm not
His
mistaken.
last film, I know it was Welcome to Mooseport. It was
Oh,
it was
is
with
that it? Was that his last film?
Ray Romano. I think it
Oh,
was like
okay.
2004,
I
and
don't
that
think
was
I
it.
saw that one. I thought it was Royal
I remember
Tenenbaums.
enjoying it. I watched it. I think it came out like the year I graduated, but that was his last movie. So I don't know if it was like a bad experience or if he just decided to hang it up after Welcome to Mooseport. But yeah, it was a movie he did with Ray Romano.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard we got Narrow Margin coming out on 4K, and I'm really that's kind of exciting. I have a
Yeah.
Blu-ray already, but that's a great movie.
Are you
Gene
planning on
Hackman
getting that
movie.
big Conversation box set that was just announced?
Oh yes, I definitely want to get my
Got a
hands on
cassette
that.
tape in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one I'm definitely interested in. The
I'd be
conversation.
willing to bet because the physical media report isn't out yet because we're recording this on a Monday. It comes out later, but I said this in the video, but I feel like it's a Lionsgate. Lionsgate put out the Blu-ray of that, so I feel like maybe we'll get a 4K steelbook of it in the States at
That'd
some
be
point.
cool. That'd be cool.
If you did want to have to spend, I don't even know how much that is. I think it's like $80 or something.
Now, I don't even know if I've ever seen the conversation all the way through. I feel like
I haven't seen it.
I mean, I don't remember
I
the
haven't
movie
seen
at
the damn
all.
French Connection. I need to watch that thing.
Yeah, I didn't watch The French Connection for the first time until just a few years ago. So I was kind of a late bloomer on that one as well.
Yeah. I got
So, but
another one with Gene Hackman not too long ago. It's called like The Package or something.
yes,
It was from
yes.
Kino Lorber that I
Yeah, that's
got
one
it.
I need to get. I think I've seen that one. It's been a lot of years, but that's another one I need to pick up on 4K. The package, it came out on 4K, right? Not just Blu-ray.
No, it was Blu-ray. I got it
Oh,
recently.
oh, okay.
Kino did it.
Oh,
It's like sometimes they'll do 4K. I don't know how the licensing works and stuff, but it feels like there's some titles that come out that feel bigger than other titles they'll do on 4K. And I'm
yeah,
like, so we got
yeah.
Paint My
It's just
Wagon on 4K, but not Hardcore, which is freaking incredible.
yeah. I guess
Um,
it just depends on what they think they can sell.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of all that kind of stuff, but who's your favorite director?
uh, Tony Scott and probably James Cameron, but the James Cameron is more from the early stuff. I wouldn't. Avatar's it's fine,
Yeah.
but I like the early James Cameron.
Have you
But I
seen both
usually
those Avatar movies?
Yeah, I have them both. I've seen them both. I like them, but they're like next to Titanic, probably my least favorite James Cameron
You
films.
just wish he wasn't devoting the rest of his life to him.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to see him get back into making a nice, solid action film. Give us another True
Mhm.
Lies or something. Something on Earth.
Yeah.
So
Tony Scott's a good one, though. He's got a lot of incredible films. I think that was one of the early videos I watched of yours. I think he ranked your favorite Tony Scott films.
yeah, I'm a
Um,
huge Tony Scott fan. It's too bad we lost him, because I feel like he was just starting to find his groove at the time of his death, and
yeah.
so it
Completely different type
real.
of filmmaker than Ridley, but like
Hmm.
I feel like I grew up with more Tony Scott films than Ridley Scott, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, me
So I feel
too.
like
Me
his
too.
filmography is a little bit more nostalgic for me. But let's see. Favorite franchise? Do you have a favorite franchise of all time?
Probably Alien.
Okay. Even with
Yeah.
Alien 3 and Resurrection? Do you like those?
Yeah, I mean, I can handle those movies. I mean, they're okay. I mean, I like Alien 3, the assembly cut. That's not too bad. I don't mind
Everybody
that.
was telling me I should have watched that because I watched Alien 3. Because after I watched Alien before I watched Aliens, just because I wanted to get in the Alien mood. And I watched them both on 4K. And I was like, you know what? I haven't watched Alien 3 since I was like a kid. So I rewatched that and I did not like it at all. I was like, oh my God, this is one of the worst movies. I hated the CGI Alien.
Yeah, the assembly
And
cut's a
everybody was
little
like, you
bit
need to
better.
watch the assembly cut. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to check that out.
Yeah, it fleshes things out a little bit more in the assembly cut, but still, there's only so much you can do with that movie, right? I mean, I think they made some critical
Yeah.
mistakes with that movie, and
Right at the
what
beginning.
exactly, exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
And then
So
Resurrection, I was like, oh my God, that was even worse. I don't
yeah,
know.
that
I
one's
didn't like
pretty hard to.
Resurrection at all. It's like
But you know,
Sigourney Weaver didn't feel like Ripley anymore. At least she
no,
still kind of felt like Ripley. And I mean, and she wasn't, right? Like she wasn't really even
right?
supposed to be Ripley. But like the third one, she still kind of felt like Ripley. But in the fourth one, it was like a completely different character. So I didn't like that at all. Because she's like
Yeah,
the main
no,
drawing point to the movies for me.
yeah, I agree. Now, I did like, so I'm not, when I say Alien as my favorite franchise, it's mainly the first two films, but I
Oh,
do
they're both
also,
great, man. Both great.
yeah, but I also like Prometheus and Alien Covenant. And,
I
I'm
like
always
Prometheus. I
down.
haven't seen it in a long time though.
Yeah, I'm always down with a new Alien film. I'm looking forward to Alien Romulus. I'm hoping it's decent.
I
So
hope it delivers too. I mean, it's got Fede Alvarez directing it, and I don't know if you saw the Evil Dead remake or
I
sequel or
haven't,
whatever you want to call it.
never saw him.
Have you seen the Evil Dead franchise?
Just the first two,
Just the first two.
Evil Dead 1 and 2.
I highly recommend watching that movie. Fede
The
Alvarez's Evil Dead from 2013.
right,
It's one
right.
of the best modern horror films, and it'll give you an idea of what maybe we can expect from Alien Romulus
Oh,
a little
okay,
bit.
cool. Yeah, I will definitely check it out then. I think I've been meaning to check that one out, and then the other one that came out last
Yeah,
year. So
that was the first movie that Fede Alvarez directed was Evil Dead. I think so. He may have done some smaller before that, but or some short films or something. But I think it was his first. It was his breakout role. I know that, or breakout directing um,
yeah, I
movie.
definitely need to check him out because I'm not very familiar with him.
He did Don't Breathe. Did you see Don't Breathe?
I haven't seen that.
That was a good one too. I do. I would recommend that one also. Home
Sounds
Invasion
like I got
movie.
a little research to do here on
Yeah,
Fetty.
I'm giving you homework. I'm giving you homework. Okay, let's get in some other back in some collecting centric topics. But what do you like the most about collecting, and what do you like the least? I'm going to ask you that as well.
I like the idea of having my own personal video store that I can go into and always have
Okay.
the movies I want, regardless of, I don't have to be dependent on internet access or some other third party streaming service. I like that I actually own them, and the ownership thing is a real big thing for me. So,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, I
What do
love
you like?
that feeling, being able to browse the shelves of my own personal video store.
It's a great feeling for sure. What do you like the least? Is there anything?
I, hmm, what do I like the least? I mean, I'm sure I could come up with something. uh,
Do you have any issues with FOMO or anything?
a little bit. Yeah, the FOMO does get you a little bit sometimes, but not too much. I mean, I can let something go and be relatively okay with it. If it's something really important to me, if it's a title that's really important, then I'll find a way to get it. But
Yeah,
I don't. Like I said earlier, I budget and prioritize just like anybody else. So I think if I had to say what I like the least is when there's so much stuff coming out and I can't keep up with it all. There's more
yeah,
things coming out within a given period of time than I'm comfortable purchasing within that time frame. So I think that's probably the thing I like the least is trying to keep up with everything. I mean, it's fun too. So, but it can be fun trying to and exciting, seeing new releases and whatever. But when we get flooded with so many, it can be a little overwhelming. And so you got to prioritize and whatnot. And I think if I had to say there was anything that I don't like having to do, I'd rather just be able to get everything I want all at once and not have to prioritize as much. So if that makes sense. So.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Do you do any streaming at all, or are you primarily does your primary movie watching consist of physical media, or do you watch anything on streaming as well?
I do watch a little bit of streaming. I mean, I will preview things on streaming just to see if I like the movie or whatnot to make sure it's something that I'm going to be interested in. But I haven't been watching a whole lot of streaming these days. In fact, I mean, in the last year or so, I've watched very little. Or the only other time I'll watch streaming is like if I'm sick and I don't feel like getting up to grab a disc or something. I'm like, sick on the couch, just watching the TV and just want to be able to click around on the buttons or something, and
Yeah.
get to the programs that I want or the movies that I want. So, but I do watch some streaming, but not a whole lot. I have noticed the compression artifacts. The streaming just doesn't look as good. And the more time that goes by, the more I notice the difference between streaming quality and disc quality. So
too much buffering.
I'd rather just buy a title and be able to watch it on disc rather than,
100%.
So,
do you watch any like TV series or anything like that? Do you use streaming for that? Or are you pretty much out on all the television stuff now?
I pretty much burned out most of the TV stuff. I probably will watch Stranger Things when the next season comes, but or it's not out yet, is it? I don't even pay attention to
I think it's
success
supposed
of
I
these
think
shows.
I think it's 2025.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I figured it had been a while, or it was going to be a while before it was out. So, so I'll probably watch Stranger Things, but for the most part, I'm not that into series. It's just I want the nice short 90-minute movie. I'm not. I don't have
too
the
much
patience.
of an investment.
Yeah, I don't have the patience for a 10 or 12 hour, show or whatever. So,
yeah, for sure. Why is physical media important to you? Owning movies physically. You probably just pretty much answered that a couple questions ago, but
yeah, probably for the film preservation aspect. It's important for me to have titles in my collection, for later on, because we don't know what the status is going to be with streaming in, 15, 20 years or even 30 years. We have no idea what that's going to look like, whether we'll all have access to the same titles that we do now or what. So I definitely want to make sure that I have my favorites in some sort of tangible format that no one can take away from me later on down the line. So I think that's a big part of it, preserving film just for my own interest, just to make sure that, I've got it if I ever want to watch it, and I even call my collection, I call it my geezer collection, like my collection of movies that I'm going to watch, like when I'm older, in my 70s or 80s or whatever, I'll have my movies, and I think of it in those terms.
Yeah. I think that's why it's important to, try to curate some type of collection that has all your favorites, and it's to always have access to those for as long as you want.
Exactly. It's
If
all
this
about
is something
access.
you care about, some people don't care about movies like that. Maybe they love some movies, but they're fine if they never see it again, But if you truly like care about film and movies like we do, you want to have access to those movies for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Do you collect any other types of media other than movies or Blu-rays?
Just
DVDs?
Compact discs, music.
Still collecting CD? Do you still collect it to this
I don't.
day, or
I'm just kind of maintaining my collection now. I'll occasionally pick up a CD, an album of a new artist. Puts a new album out. Like
you into vinyl or anything at all?
Not a whole lot. I have a few vinyl pieces, but for the most part, and that's just if it came in like some collectible set or something. But no, I'm not into vinyl too much. It's mainly CDs, and my CD collection is pretty much where I want it to be right now.
Is that over there to your side? Is that the CD collection?
Yeah, all this is CDs here. So
cool.
So yeah, my CD collection is pretty much. I'm not adding a whole lot of new stuff to it. I'm just kind of maintaining whenever an album or an artist I like comes out with a new album, I buy that. But I'm not. I maybe only buy, I don't know, 3, 4 CDs a year. I don't buy very much anymore of those. So I'm pretty happy with my collection where it's at right now.
Yeah.
The music, that is.
Do you collect any books or anything like that? Do
No,
you do any reading? No, really?
no, not a whole lot. I'm more of
Very,
a online article kind of reader.
yeah, I'm like, man, I want to get back into reading, and then I'll buy a couple books, and then I'll never read them. So always happens that way. At
That's
least you're
actually
more
what happens to
realistic
me
about
too.
what you're gonna do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll buy a couple books and then I'll forget to read them. I was like, oh, okay, that didn't work out. So,
What are your thoughts on the state of physical media right now? Do you think it's healthy? Do you feel like it's going anywhere anytime soon? How much
I
longer
think
we got, Fuzz?
I have no idea. I think I don't see it going away anytime soon. I think it's a healthy thing right now. I think, but it is definitely. It's never going to be mainstream like it once was. It's never going to be that again. And and I think where people get hung
Well,
up is they.
you haven't read all the articles. There's like 15,000 articles coming out every day about physical media is alive and well. And then in the next day they'll say that it's dying because
Yeah,
Target's
yeah.
getting
Well,
rid of
I
it.
think where we get for the longest time people are saying it physical media is dead or it's dying or whatever because they're comparing what it was like 30 years ago to what it's like now. And you can't really do that. I mean, the market has changed, right? It's a more
Yeah,
niche collector's market now. It is not a mainstream thing. So the masses are not going to be out there, uh, you know, engaging in physical media that much. The masses are streaming. So I don't really ever see it getting back to some sort of mainstream level. But I think it's growing right now. I think we're seeing a bit of a resurgence. And I mean, 4K is really growing as a format right now.
yeah.
And I think 4K has a pretty bright future. I do think it's the last, 4K is the last stop for disc-based physical media. I don't see us, I don't think there's going to be any 8K discs or anything like that. I don't know, maybe there will, but I just don't see that as being very
My
practical.
thoughts are is that maybe you'll see some boutique labels or studio experiments with it at some point, but I don't think it's ever going to be like a thing, like a mainstream thing where there's
Yeah,
like a spot on the Walmart shelf for 8K.
yeah, I think I could see 8K maybe being utilized a little bit for streaming as kind of
Yeah,
a
for sure. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
uh but I don't think it's something that's going to be practical for disc, nor do I think it's going to be all that practical for studios to go back and like rescan all their negatives in 8K. I mean, that's going to be extremely expensive, and I just don't see them doing that.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, I can see maybe redoing some scans of some stuff that you did that just wasn't up to par, but like a lot of these 4Ks now, they look great. So it's like, I don't, we've always said this, right? We've said it since like the DVD era. I don't see how this can look better. But I just really don't see how it could look better at this point. I really
I do
don't.
think if we were to get into 8K, we're getting into a territory there where I think we start to see some diminishing returns. It's not as uh,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see the benefits that we saw with 4K. I think it's going to be kind of, well, maybe it's not better to go 8K. Maybe we were better off sticking with
We're seeing
4K.
too many strings.
Yeah, exactly. So, uh, but in terms of the future, I don't know. I don't see it going away anytime soon, but I do think it's going to be a collector's market, and it's going to. I think prices are going to continue to increase because these things are becoming more collectible.
Yeah.
But I think we're good for at least another, I don't know, 20 years or more with physical
Now,
media. I don't see it
do you
going
see
anywhere.
yourself collecting in that time? Do you ever think that there'll be a time? And I know it's hard to really know, but do you think that do you feel like you're winding down yourself, or do you feel like you're just getting started? I guess is what I'm trying to say. Do
Uh,
you think that you'll collect for that full 20 years?
yeah, I think I'm going to reach a point where I'm pretty happy with everything I have in my collection, kind of like I did with my CDs, and it'll just be kind of maintaining. Just kind of if a new title comes out in a new restoration or something, and maybe it's something I don't have yet, I'll grab that. But yeah, I don't really see it. I don't see it winding down anytime soon for me, but I can envision a time where it will eventually. I'll feel like I have everything I want, and if I get to
Yeah.
that point, then I probably won't be buying as much.
Yeah.
But I'm
And I
not
don't
there
know.
yet.
I get it. I mean, for me lately, like we're still getting so many incredible releases, but it's like it feels like we're getting some of the same stuff like over and over again. And then other stuff that I really want and want them to pay a little bit more attention to, we're not getting. I know that all comes down to rights issues and things like that, but at the end of the day, as a consumer, it's like I'm not really supposed to be wrapped up in all that stuff. It's just I want the stuff that I want, and if I'm not getting it, then it makes me less engaged. It's just naturally how it happens.
Exactly. And I
Um,
always, like at the beginning of the year, I've noticed that I tend to slow down a little bit in the first part of the year in terms of like
yeah,
buying things, buying titles,
I think
and
that all
then,
goes into like we're all making New Year's resolutions, or we're trying to
yeah.
a new beginning, trying to do better, things like that.
But
But
then once the second half of the year comes and we get all these amazing titles, it's like, oh, I got to have those.
yeah,
So,
like I'm actually a little afraid of Arrow Video right now because it feels like they've been holding back so much. I'm like, what are you all planning? Like for the rest
yeah,
of the
they got
year?
something big around the corner that they're going to
Because
drop
I've
on
heard
us.
some rumblings about a few things, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know. It could get wild, or maybe it won't, and then I'll be disappointed that it didn't get wild. Um, but if it does get too wild, then that'll get very expensive.
Well, it seemed like that kind of happened, I guess, last year with Arrow, where they went through a lull there for about 6 months where they weren't like putting out a whole lot of stuff. And then they just hit
Yeah,
us with all this great stuff like that Empire Screams box and whatnot.
yeah, that was around
So,
June. So yeah,
yeah.
they started ramping up around the summertime last year. But yeah, everybody was knocking it out of the park last year. I'm really probably the most disappointed with Scream Factory a little bit this year. Um, outside of Killer Clowns, there's nothing that I feel like has been like must get from them.
Well,
But
the
that's
thing
just me. Like,
Yeah,
some
the
people
thing
can feel
about
differently.
Scream Factory's been an interesting thing for me because I know a lot of people haven't been interested in all their 4K upgrades, but I've been digging it because I'm relatively
Me
new to
too.
horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm acquiring these titles for the first time. So when they're putting out a title on 4K that they previously put out on Blu-ray, like I'm excited about it because there's a good chance that I don't already own that title because I'm so new to horror. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
really
some of those
appreciate the
Blu-rays
4K
that they did in the
releases.
beginning, like, yeah, I'm sure they were nice additions, but they did not look great. Like when they upgraded the burning, like that was night and day difference
Oh,
from
really?
that 4K
See,
to
I
that
never even
Blu-ray.
saw the previous Blu-rays. I bought
Yeah,
that
that
4K, but
and Night of the Demons was incredible in 4K. Night of the Comet was like one of the best 4Ks I've ever seen. So like
that
they
one
were
looked
just doing
good.
some of their best. They were doing all kinds of great stuff last year, like just knocking out banger after banger. And it was a lot of 4K upgrades. And I get some
Yeah,
people weren't excited about that, but like for me, yeah, I loved that. And that's what I love about Screen Factory. It just feels like this year they did a whole month where they just did Blu-rays. They didn't even do like a 4K, which is fine, if you kind of want to scale back a little bit. But then it's like Darkman, and I don't know, like Darkman's okay, but like this stuff, stuff they've been doing recently, like Carrie and Child's Play remake, and I just haven't been too into. So,
that's cool. Yeah,
and then the
I
Faculty, they announced the Faculty, and then they pulled back on it, and that really upset me too.
did they? I don't know if I heard that. Did they
So
withdraw? They're not
the
doing it?
pre-order went up, and then it was on Blu-ray.com. It was up on pre-order on Amazon, and Scream Factory never officially announced it. But Scream
Oh,
Factory,
okay.
like all their stuff leaks and it gets up for pre-order on Amazon before they announce it. I don't know
Right,
how that
right.
works. So it was coming, and then it wasn't. So now there's no word on when it's actually going to come out. But it
Oh,
was supposed
lame.
to come out back in April.
That's one I would definitely pick up.
Yeah, I love that
Pr-
movie.
Probably right off the bat, day one. So
Yeah. All right. Are there any, speaking of that, are there any 4K or Blu-ray releases that you're looking forward to in the near future? What's on your radar currently?
oh, geez, what's on my radar? Turbulence, the Ray Liotta movie. I'm looking forward to Turbulence.
I've
Blown
never seen
Away.
that.
Yeah, I saw it, but I don't remember it. I saw it years ago when it
The
first came
premise
out.
sounded like it was going to be incredible. Like
Yeah,
Ray Liotta as a psychopath on an airplane. It sounded
I
freaking
seem to
awesome.
remember liking the movie. I don't remember it very
Yeah.
well, but I do remember liking it. I'm looking forward to Blown Away. I think Kino's putting that out on 4K. The Jeff Bridges movie, Tommy Lee Jones. That's a
Yeah.
great film. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Respect to Kino Lorber for all the action love. I'll just say that.
Yes, yes,
They
very
do a good
much
job
so.
with the action.
Yeah, so those are a couple that I'm looking for. I've got a couple other things pre-ordered. Oh, The Case of the Bloody Iris. That's a new label. I think it's called like Celluloid Dreams or something like that. And
Okay.
that's an old Giallo with Edward Finch. So that's one that I have pre-ordered, and I'm definitely looking forward to that one as well. I do like Giallo.
I don't even
So
know if that was on my radar or not. You might have just put it on there.
I
The
think
Case
it's a
of Bloody
brand new
Iris.
label, and I think it might even be their
Like
first release.
it's coming to me a little bit now, but yeah, that wasn't even on my radar.
So,
So
but I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of other announcements that we'll get flooded with before the end of the year. Some
let me
great stuff.
let me ask you something. Are you into westerns at all?
No, not
Not at
really. I
all.
mean, no, that's one of those
Well,
genres that I,
you said you like giallos, and I have said this before, but I think spaghetti westerns are pretty much in the same family. Like they're so I would
I could understand that.
if you're not too into westerns, here's one that I would recommend. It's Once Upon a Time in the West. This is
Oh,
the
yeah.
best. Like if you don't like this, then you can hang it up and you don't have to
That's
watch
Sergio
anymore.
Leone, right? Sergio
That's
Leone.
Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the Dollars trilogy.
I liked
Which
Once
one? You,
Upon a Time in America. I have that one.
yeah,
So,
that's Sergio Leone as well.
no.
But I just watched this last night. It's an incredible film, and it
Cool.
feels in the same vein as like the Italian horror films. It's just you got desert and saloons and horses and cowboy hats. So
Well, I may have to check it out at some point.
it's the
I've
same
had,
kind of style and sensibility, and the characters feel the same. And it's I
I
don't know,
got you.
I love them.
Cool.
I love them. So I would say
Cool.
I would recommend some Italian westerns, and maybe some of those Arrow video box sets like Blood Money. Like those are really cool. And one of those are even has a movie that's directed by Lucio Fulci in it.
Right on.
So
Cool.
but Fuzz, man, I think that's it. I think we've arrived at the end of our conversation. Again, I highly recommend to anybody that is watching, if you're not yet subscribed to the original Fuzz, hit the link down below in the description. I will have his YouTube channel. I will also have his Twitter link as well, or X link, or whatever they're calling it these days. Do you have a letterbox also, Fuzz?
No, just Twitter. Twitter's the only thing I put out there publicly aside from my YouTube channel. So
Okay,
my Facebook is something that that's more my private account.
cool,
So
cool. But yeah, highly recommend your content, man. And I appreciate you coming on, man.
oh,
I know you
thank
were
you so
nervous,
much.
and but I'm glad that you did it, and you probably feel better about it now that you've done it.
I
And
I do, and this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being able to chat with you, Ken. I'm glad we
yeah,
were able to make this happen. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate that.
for sure, man. Yeah, we need to. I like to get some new stuff started on the channel with like multi people streams and stuff again, but I'm trying to get back into that stuff. But I wanted to at least bring back this because I've always liked doing these collector interviews. They're always super fun. And
Oh, I love
um,
this series. It's actually one of my favorite shows that you do. So
yeah, because
I
everybody's so
I try to watch
different
them
with
all.
how they collect and what they value, and I find it all so fascinating. I really do. I really do. But thank you so much, Fuzz. I'll let you promote yourself real quick before we go, and then we'll go ahead and shut her down. What do you have to
Okay.
say?
So you can catch my channel at the original Fuzz, all one word, where I talk about physical media. And if you're into horror and action and sci-fi movies from the 70s through the 90s, you'll probably really dig my channel. And if you're a new collector, you might also dig my channel. I do try to offer as many tips as I can for new collectors. So yeah, give me a sub.
Is that the Phantasm Sphere? Do you have that back there?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yeah, right back
Awesome.
there. Yep.
I
Yeah.
saw that in Best Buy for like a good year, and it was always there. It never went on sale. I think it was like over $100, but I should have got it. I never did though.
Yeah,
Never
it's a
did.
great set. I'm hoping that comes to 4K at some point.
Yeah,
So,
hopefully.
I mean,
Hopefully.
in the US. So
yeah, hopefully so. But everybody, thank you all for watching. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Drop us a comment down below if you have anything to say about any of the discussion points that we had in the conversation today. We would appreciate that. And subscribe to Fuzz for sure. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet subscribed to me. Hit that subscribe button. And we will see you guys later.